Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have a brand new Mattel Jurassic World figure to take a look at, another Dino Trackers figure, as we have the second half of the newest gigantic trackers. We've got the Bistahieversor, and this is a very cool species to see entering the Mattel line, one that obviously has never appeared in the line before, so it's always fun to enter a new species, especially a new Tyrannosaur. And this one was one that I was kind of 50-50 on at first, because I felt like it looked pretty cool, but these random quills on the back here kind of threw me off. But I will say, seeing it here in person, it actually does look pretty cool, and it is actually, unique and different, that thing that they have going on here with those quills. It really helps the figure to stand out and differentiate it from previously released Tyrannosaurs. So it is nice to see that Mattel put in a little bit of extra effort to kind of give us more of a creative design for this, obviously, thinking outside the box and taking some artistic liberties with this version of the Bistahieversor. But you can see, as far as the packaging goes, it's pretty much your standard. And then, of course, once we turn it around, you can see the back shows an image here of the dinosaur with its tracking gear on. You can also see a sneak peek of the action feature, as well as another kind of action feature sort of deal going on. And then the other gigantic tracker that is out currently, which is the Elasmosaurus, which we have reviewed on the channel already. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. So here is the tracking gear, and here is our Bistahieversor, and definitely looks pretty cool. I like this pose that they've given it, because that's like the natural pose for it to stand in, with this kind of, somewhat crouched look. Definitely looks cool. I don't believe we've really had any species of dinosaurs in the past from Mattel that had that sort of crouched pose as like the regular pose. They're normally positioned more upright. Well, not even like that. Actually, I would say somewhere around there, positioned more of like just kind of like a standard standing pose. But this one has kind of a really cool appearance to it with that crouching look. And I really like the paint apps on this. I think the paint apps on this look phenomenal. And, the only thing really missing on this one, in my opinion, would have been nail paint. I think then they really would have hammered out a fantastic looking paint job for this figure. But the only way to really tell how nice this truly is with a closer look. So let's jump to it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Bistahieversor, you can see the skin texture and scale detail looks really cool. We have some very rough and rugged looking skin texture here as you move through the face. Quite a bit of varying sizes of scales, but very, very cool, very rough and rugged looking for sure. You can see kind of like some spikes here leading up and over the top of the palate and eye area here. Kind of like ridges moving up and over there. Not really so much as spikes, but more like ridges moving up over there. You can see the nostrils sculpted out. You can also see the eye is sculpted nicely and painted very nicely. We have a nice green tone for the eye and a black slit-like pupil. You can also see that we have this black tone here on the lower jaw, and I like that it kind of like leaks up into the face, up into the eye socket area. And then, of course, we have this very light tone for the majority of the body color here on the face in the first half of the dinosaur, which also looks really cool and definitely helps this darker tone to play off of that lighter tone very nicely. We do have an articulated jaw. You can see the teeth are pretty big and bulky and don't really look that great, but they don't look terrible. Mattel has really been doing a consistent job, I'll say, as far as painting the teeth nowadays with more of like a light gray rather than the like off-white. They used to paint them with more like an off-white bordering on a yellow. Lately it's been more of like a light gray. You can see kind of a shine to them too, though, which helps to add a little element of realism. And you can also see that we've got the tongue sculpted out in there, very nicely textured, and we've got a nice realistic pinkish tone for the inside of the mouth that also sports a very nice gloss coat, which you can really see shining there off of the tongue. We again have some very nice variation of scales here. As you look down on the lower jaw, you've got all kinds of varying sizes of scales. As you come up here to the top of the head, you can see again some really nice big scale detail up here running along the top of the head. Very reptilian looking scale detail. You can also see an area of darker coloration running here, and that's because this figure has that thing that Mattel's been doing lately where they kind of create the figure with like different tones of color like embedded into the material. So I don't know exactly what you would call it, but they have done this to a lot of different figures recently, and I think it looks really cool. Definitely adds a little bit of flavor to the coloration of the dinosaur. But you can see we've got some ridges moving down the back of the neck. They kind of end pretty quickly, though, as you lead to the bottom of the neck. You can see some darker tones, again, those blacks leading up and striping up here, and they do run the entire way over back to the other side. We also have some kind of like osteoderms moving down the side of the neck right there. You can see the throat on the underside. Very different style of scale detail here for the underside, and even a little bit of hanging skin kind of right there on the underside of the throat. As we continue to move down here, you can see again more of those black tones striping up and leading up. The arm is completely encased in that black tone. You can see some nice muscle definition as you move down the arm, as well as some pretty nice looking skin texture. Very nicely sculpted fingers and nails. You can see that the nails are black because of course that's the entire tone of the arm. So it does give the nails kind of an appearance of being painted on the fingers. But as you move back up here, you can not only see again that the skin texture looks really nice and follows that similar trend to that kind of big rough and rugged looking skin texture we saw on the face, but you can see more of that kind of darker tone that's sort of like embedded in the plastic of the dinosaur, which again adds just a little extra color, but it can be a little inconsistent because when you look over here you don't see as much of it, whereas over here there's a lot of it. But as you move back here, you can see the ridges pick back up again, running along the spinal column, and they start to turn into larger ridges, which eventually transition to kind of like a quill-like look, or I'm not really entirely sure what they were going for with this area, but I sort of, think they look like quills. But you can see, again, we also transition to that black tone that we saw running along the underside. And we also have some red that kind of splotches and designs here for a bit here as you move through. Just to add a little extra color variation, you can see more of those really large scales, those very large kind of osteoderm-like or scute-like scales moving through. You see more of them, kind of like clusters of them here. As you move down into the thigh, you can definitely pick up on some nice muscle definition there. You've got the kneecap and the front of the leg, nice muscle definition in the calf as well. More of that, again, darker coloration that's embedded in the material. And then as you move down into the foot sculpt, it is a very nice looking foot sculpt. Nice scoots down the toes, really vibrant skin texture and scale detail. And the nails themselves also have some nice kind of cracks and crevices in the nails to give them a nice bit of realism. And you can see there's kind of like a satin shine on the nails, so it sort of gives them kind of the look of being painted without actually having any paintwork on them. And there is a dew claw back there, which you can see on the opposing side as well. But as we move back up into the tail, you can again see now the entire dinosaur has transitioned to that black tone. The black originally did cut off very abruptly in almost a flame-like fashion leading into the chest, and then that lighter tone was what we saw through the majority of the underside until we reached this area, and now the tail again has completely been taken over with that black tone of color. And you can see as you move out, you've got a really nice curve, and you can see whatever those things are up on the top, which I guess they're quills, return to a smaller size and then lead down and disappear. But you also have some nice looking scale detail as well as you move out. You're not really going to see a whole lot of difference on this side, of course, but we can get a look at the head. Make sure the eye is placed nicely, which it is, because sometimes you have a little bit of quality control issues when it comes to the paintwork of Mattel figures. And then as you move back, you can see everything looks pretty much the same as what we had just seen before. And you can also see again that one of the only differences you're really going to see on this side is the fact that the leg is trailing more so on this side compared to leading on the other side. But you can see again all of that darker coloration that's kind of embedded into the figure, and then we lead back again into the really cool tail. So it definitely looks awesome. Like, I think, again, even though it's not what I would even remotely consider a scientifically accurate Bistahieversor, I think it's a super cool, very stylized version of one, and probably what I would imagine one would look like in the Jurassic franchise if it ever did actually appear in a film. Also, we've got the tracking gear, and you can see the tracking gear looks pretty cool, just like it did, honestly, for the Elasmosaurus. We have that brown coloration and everything. And, of course, the similar style of detail. It looks very highly detailed, that's for sure. But we will get that on here in a moment. First of all, we're going to take a look at the articulation, which, as you can see, is the articulated jaw. We also have the neck articulation, which probably is part of the action feature. We do have two buttons, so we'll see what they do here in a moment. We also have arm articulation, forward and back, which is incredibly smooth. Also, out away from the body, also very smooth. And then we've got leg articulation, which isn't so smooth. It works okay once you get it going. And then, of course, it comes out away from the body and then back in, so a little bit of extra articulation there. Doesn't look like we have any tail articulation at all, though. Like, there's this little joint out here, but that doesn't do anything, so that's interesting enough, probably because of those quills. So if we go ahead and activate the action feature, I will say that's kind of cool because rather than just dropping down and taking a snap at something, it kind of leads up and then comes down with force. If you watch it again, that's pretty neat. And then we've also got this button over here. Yep, so that's going to activate these very strange quills and cause them to move, which I assume maybe would be some sort of a defense mechanism. Very interesting, very creative idea for sure on the part of Mattel. And there we go, we now have the tracking gear on our Bistahieversor, and it looks pretty cool. I do like it because it has that Kenner feel. Again, I've said that with each and every one of these Dino Tracker figures that have had tracking gear. It gives it almost that capture gear feel like you would have had with, of course, Kenner figures. I would definitely prefer capture gear over tracking gear, but, you know, it's just a gimmick for the figures, something that Mattel decided to go with to give us something a little bit different from previous lines, and I do like it, and I also think it looks pretty cool. But as far as the size goes, if you are familiar with the Gigantic Trackers line, you're going to already have a pretty good idea of the size, but for a length, you're looking at about almost 14 inches, just shy a little bit, or about 35, closing in on 35.5 centimeters, but not quite. The highest point is going to be probably one of these quills, and you are looking at about 6.25 inches, or just shy of 16 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Gigantic Trackers Bistahieversor, and you can see it's pretty much in the size range you probably expected it to be in, or at least it's definitely in the size range I expected it to be in. And to show you that for another comparison, here is a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus stepping in for a comparison next to the Bistahieversor, showing you that again it does obviously have some pretty good size to it. We've also got a Hammond Collection Parasaurolophus here, standing next to the Bistahieversor. Just kind of lead this back a little bit to give you a better view of the two next to each other. Obviously, there's a pretty good comparison here when it comes to size, not too far off as far as, you know, both of these figures go. We've also got the recently released Wild Roar Orcoraptor here next to the Bistahieversor to show you that, again, the Orcoraptor isn't too far off as far as the size goes. And here is the Yanchuanosaurus from the, I think they were the Massive Action line, potentially, for Jurassic World Dominion. And you can see the Bistahieversor is actually a little bit smaller than our Yanchuanosaurus. So that's surprising because technically these are like supposed to be in the same similar size range. So overall, the Bistahieversor is a little bit smaller than what you would normally get for this size range. And then for one final comparison, here are both of the Gigantic Trackers from this wave, as we have the Elasmosaurus and the Bistahieversor, which you can see the Elasmosaurus is definitely a bit larger. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Dino Trackers Gigantic Trackers Bistahieversor is definitely a really cool figure. Again, I'm surprised actually to see it is a little bit smaller than you would think it would be, but still it is an absolutely gorgeous looking sculpt, especially when it comes to the fine detail. The fine detail is really, really well done. Like, impressive skin texture and scale detail would be putting it mildly. As you look through the course of the figure, there is a lot of really nice detail on this figure. Definitely had to have taken a long time to sculpt this guy out, but on top of that, they've given it that very cool, very stylized, and again, kind of exaggerated sort of look that we have for this one that I think initially I was not really a fan of, but now having it here in person, I'm definitely more of a fan of it than I expected to be. I think the appearance of those, again, I don't know if they're quills or what they're supposed to be. They're running along the back of the tail. Does look pretty striking and definitely sets this one apart from all of the other Tyrannosaurs that Mattel has released in the past. So it is pretty cool to see something so unique, so different, and it's neat to see that Mattel is continuing to give us very cool, different looking dinosaurs. Again, when you create Tyrannosaur after Tyrannosaur after Tyrannosaur, which they do have quite a few in their line, you know, it's nice to still be able to differentiate them and not have them look like exactly the same figure almost. So even if it's not something that you would probably actually see on a Bistahieversor, it does look pretty cool. The paint job is also really nicely done. We've got a lot of coloration on this one from head to tail, giving it almost a fully painted appearance. Of course, the only thing really missing would be nail paint, but outside of that, I think the paint job looks really cool, very different, very unique, just like the overall appearance to the dinosaur, and also very appealing. So I am a pretty big fan of the paint job. We also have articulation, which is fun. You know, you always love having articulation on figures, and we've got some pretty cool action features, and both of them are very different and very unique, and I think that's pretty cool as well. Again, the quills kind of moving on the tail is something they have not done before, and the snapping feature of the dinosaur is also a little bit different than we've seen on previously released theropods. On top of that, you also have tracking gear just for that extra icing on the cake, and as a whole, it's definitely a really, really cool release yet again from Mattel. So if you are interested in picking one of these up, I will include a link in the description to Big Bad Toy Store where you can purchase yourself one of these, along with many other Mattel figures that are currently releasing. So make sure you check that link. Go grab this absolutely awesome Bistahieversor and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.